Hi, folks. My name is Rick West, and I'm here with you today at West Virginia SHAPE 2021 virtually. And I wanted to share my presentation with you about team building and culture. So let me share my screen with you, and we will begin. So I am a professor at Fairmont State University, and the title of my presentation is Building a Team Culture, Where Do I Begin? So one of the things I've always enjoyed about SHAPE is that it's always been a really great um, place to come and get practical knowledge and practical things that you can use in your classroom, on the playing surfaces if you're a coach, but things you can actually use. So I always try to focus my talks here at SHAPE on something that you can take away with you and put into practice right away. And it's based off of course, research-based information, but also off of practical experiences. And hopefully you can take some of those away from me and use them in your situations and not make the same mistakes that I do and go forward from there. So that's kind of where we'll begin. So really what we're looking at today are the initial steps to building a successful team culture and building it around its leaders. The lecture is really looking at the leadership that you have on your team, the input you have from your team, and also the institutional expectations, because different organizations are going to have different expectations as to what um, they're looking for uh, and expecting out of their sports teams and their organizations. And then we're going to look at the process of culture development. We're going to look at the values and the standards and the goals and how those kind of stack on top of one another as you move forward through this process. So just a little bit about me. Again, I'm an assistant professor at Fairmont Physical Education at Fairmont State University. This is my second year at Fairmont. I have been at a different institution for 9 years. Prior to that, teaching in health and human performance as well. I'm also the associate head men's swimming coach at West Virginia University. So I do two roles. So I burn up the road on 79 between Fairmont and WVU, going back and forth between the two. So my experiences in the classroom really range from being a physical education kindergarten teacher all the way through to teaching master's students. I've been in K-12 classrooms. I've been in two different institutions of higher ed teaching, been in grad programs, so kind of a wide berth of different teaching experiences. And the same thing for coaching as well. I've coached age group programs, recreational swim league programs in the summertime, but also collegiate programs as well. And so a lot of different experiences. And I'll try to focus on how this experience for me might be applicable to you, because obviously not everyone's coaching in the same situation. So where do I begin? And probably more so, not just where do we begin, but why did we do this? So we have often talked about culture on our team and what's the culture and what's the philosophy. And I will tell you from a recruiting standpoint, it's probably one of the questions I get asked most often and very, very early in the recruiting process. I recruit for the men's team. And one of the things that the guys will always ask is, what's your team culture like? What's your team like in terms of the culture, the background, the things of that nature? And so if you don't have a really clear picture of what that is, it becomes difficult to articulate. So that was one reason that we started to kind of pinpoint and really focus in on what the culture of West Virginia University swimming was going to be. Another thing, and this is kind of a sort of a positive thing, I guess, that came out of the situation, but was COVID. We had to go from, this was, I guess it would be around March of 20. We went from being on deck and we were at a large swim meet, and we were pulled off deck and put into our kind of own homes, and we had to be apart from one another and just kind of meet virtually like this and via Zoom. And all the things that we had to do. So we really had some time to kind of reflect and look at our team and say, okay, how do we want to do this? How do we kind of want to define and build this culture? So we started with just a couple places. Um, the first are the known factors I'm going to go over, which is you, the coach, the current leaders on your team, the input from your team, and then the institutional expectations. And then how to build that foundation. In other words, how to start building the culture from maybe you already have the beginning portions of a culture, you have the framework of a culture, or maybe you're starting from scratch. And so you look at things like the team values, the standards, the goals, the evaluation, and the accountability. So that's sort of where we started. And we worked with an organization called The Program. And I'm going to talk about that toward the end um, of the presentation today and give you their information as well. You don't necessarily have to use an outside organization, but they are helpful because they give you sort of an unbiased or non-tainted look at your team and your processes. So we'll talk a bit about that toward the end as well. So first are the known factors, and this was really impactful for us to hear because when you start looking at building your culture, you have to start with the values, and it's your personal values as the coach, because eventually, at some point in time, when there's an ultimate decision to be made, it's going to be up to the coach to make that ultimate decision. And so in research, we call this bias. You know, you have to disclose your bias. And you as a coach, you're going to have personal values. You're going to have personal views on situations. You're going to have expectations of what you want yourself to do, but you also what you want your team to do. And then you also have your past experiences to draw on. And those things kind of conglomerate into your values. So your morals that you have as a human being, your expectations that you have as a coach and as a competitor and as a teacher and an instructor and an educator, along with the experiences you've had maybe as an athlete or that you've had as a coach. Those will help shape your values. And it becomes important that you know and define what those values are for you, because again, that's going to help construct the basis of foundation whenever you make the decisions that you have to make for your team. The next thing you have to consider are the current leaders that you have on the team. The current leaders can go in lots of different directions. On a high school, maybe it's your seniors. In some organizations, maybe it's your captains. Maybe you have a large age group team, so you have captains that are kind of voted upon by the team. Maybe you have just players who are very well respected. They're great students, they're great individuals, they're really respected leaders. And then you have high achievers, somebody who might be really fast on your team or really an all-star performer or something like that. But kind of start digging through. And as you can see, we have a quite large team of about 65 athletes. So we really have to kind of sift through and find all the leadership qualities that we can from different individuals, because not everyone has the same leadership qualities. Not everyone offers the same thing as leaders. Some leaders are much more quiet than others. Some leaders are much more boisterous and gregarious than others. Some leaders are much more driven and focused. Others kind of are able to go with the flow. And at different times call for different measures. Obviously, during COVID, the go with the flow leader was probably a little bit more desirable because every day we had a different policy, procedure, edict that would come down from above that we had to do something a different way. So sometimes the focus driven person in that situation wasn't exactly the best leader because of the fact that they would get derailed a little bit. So you kind of have to look for the leaders on your team and talk with them in terms of how they can help shape and grow the culture of your team, which is to overall what you're trying to do. And the next is overall team input, whether they're leaders or not. Everyone has a voice, and you can kind of pull this out in different manners. You can have surveys. Surveys are really great as long as the right questions are asked and the right types of things are trying to be elicited from the individual. But surveys do provide, especially if they're they're anonymous surveys, a nice way to get some genuine feedback from individuals on your team, um, that will help you kind of, again, refocus on where the culture is right there at that time. So you can ask some pretty pointed questions about that and kind of see where you are as a group and then where you're wanting to be down the road. But surveys are a great way to do that. I personally enjoy focus groups the most. I think small groups of individuals that can get together and talk work really well. We did this with Zoom at the focus groups. We actually sat down and pulled in from different areas of Zoom uh, classes. So I had the sophomore class and sophomore men's class. So I met with those 6 guys and we kind of wrote down, we had a theme for the week and a topic for the week, and we would talk about what that topic was, and we kind of related it back to what's going on with the team at that point in time. So conflict was a topic one week and how we deal with conflict. And we talked about some after, because they were then sophomores, so they had just been freshmen. What are some of the ways that they liked to have to deal with conflict? What are some things that happened that they did not like to deal with for conflict? And that information kind of helped me understand, and the coaching staff understand, where's our culture today? Are we able to talk to one another in a way that there is conflict and confrontation, but we can get past it because we understand and care about one another? Or is it something to where we become very hurt, we become very upset due to the fact that we're saying things that maybe aren't positive to one another? Also look at traditions. All of your, this is, there's some wonderful, great traditions out there that really kind of help shape the culture of your team, whether it's singing the alma mater at the end of your competition to your fans in the crowd to kind of show respect that you're all one, those types of things. But that sort of helps build the culture of what you are and who you are and things that you've carried over. And the last are new ideas. So ask your team about things that they might like to see. What are some things that they would be interested in bringing forward? Maybe they've seen from other teams. If you are a coach that has maybe a club team that's large and you're pulling from different high schools and different organizations, what's something that you do at your high school that you really liked, you really enjoyed, and you can bring that into your club? Or if you're a college coach, what are some things at your high schools that you liked? Or even if you're a high school coach at your middle schools, what are some things that you enjoyed? And those new ideas can help shape your culture as well. So those are some of the known factors. And last but not least are the institutional expectations. So I use the YMCA for this because I used to work for the YMCA back when I first started teaching, and that was part of one of the places that I taught. The YMCA was inside the high school, so I taught classes and then worked for the Y. And one of their mottos is that everybody plays, everybody wins. So that sort of puts you with the organization and lets you know exactly up front what the mission of that organization is. So if the mission for your school or your organization is that everyone gets a chance at the game, we don't do cuts, everyone plays, everyone has a chance to play, you sort of know how you can start to build the culture around that and how to support one another. If the mission of your group is, a travel squad, and we only kind of want to compete against the best and play against the best and put ourselves in that position and compete and perform at a high level, then that's a different culture that's going to be established from the everybody plays, everybody wins. So you kind of have to know what the institutional expectations are as well. And that might come from a board or a supervisor or a committee, depending on who sort of has the supervisory role for you as a coach. They will help ask those questions of them. What are your expectations of our culture? What are some things that you would like to see? And last but not least, but very, very probably the most important, are age appropriate expectations. Be very cautious not to take high school or college expectations and put them on a youth sport type of organization, and vice versa. I don't know that every high school or college has the everybody plays, everybody wins mentality. So it does work both ways. Make sure that you have the age appropriate expectations um, of what the culture should be as well. And use the board, use the stakeholders that are there with the supervisors and the committee members, and then go with the research of what's age appropriate for those individuals to help move them forward in the culture. So those are your known factors. Those are the things when you walk into a team, you have there already. They're already a part of what's going on and who you are. And those are kind of the hand you're dealt, so to speak. You, the leaders on your team, the overall team, and then the institution that you're working with and working for. So now the next step is we have these variables that we know. So what do we do with them? What's the next step? So we're going to start building the foundation. And the first thing is we have to look at team values. And I'm going to kind of show you the process that we actually went through with our team and kind of go from there. So the first thing that was really stressed to us, and I completely agree with, is it begins with your values as a head coach. Again, the head coach is ultimately responsible for making the last decisions when it comes to something. So they have to really believe in the values. So this is one place that I pulled from, which is educationaltools.com under values. And you can see that they have a sheet where they have a list of values, and you have some places they handwrite it. We did this little exercise with our staff, and there were 6 of us, and we kind of started to circle different words that we valued. And I think we started off with 8. And then we were challenged to get that down to 5, and to get the 5 down to 3. And the way that it worked was, if you kind of look at this list as you're playing the recording back, and you have something like humor, but at the same time you also have strength. At some point you get to where you have 4 words, and it becomes really hard to throw one out. You have to throw that one word out. And one of the things that happened in this is we came back as a group together. And we had each of the coaching staff had their 3 words. Well, of course, they're all different. There were themes. There were some that were very easy. So, for example, several of the coaches had integrity, but I had honesty. Now, that wasn't too much of a stretch to go towards, and meaning that from integrity to honesty, we worked out the definition of those pretty clear. And as you can see, there's no definitions on these words as they're given to you. One of the words that I had trouble with, our core values, by the way, are passion, integrity, and commitment. And I was pretty staunchly against passion whenever we started. And we had a really good conversation about that. My definition of passion was emotion, meaning that when a decision is made, a passionate decision is made, emotion is involved with it. And I did not think that emotion should be something that we bring into our team values. That's something, emotion can rise and fall within the moment. Emotions change, and we want something that's rock solid. What was defined from the head coach, he said, well, I see passion as, kind of a love, as something that I genuinely enjoyed. So that's my passion. That definition was much more palpable to me as an assistant coach than the definition of where passion and emotion were tied together. So they create really great conversations with you and the rest of the staff to kind of define things. So don't make the assumption whenever you're going through this, as I did, that that everyone's definition of peace and loyalty and clarity, and the other words here, are all exactly the same. So talk through that. It took us about 3 weeks to get through this process of narrowing the words down to our core values. And we compared notes again with each other, and that's kind of how we got to this point. And then the key question at the end of this was, as a coach, can I, as the head coach, can we as a staff, I'm not the head coach, I'm just saying that in that situation, but can the person as the head coach, and can we as a staff, can we support these values? And again, we came up with passion, integrity, and commitment. Everyone could get behind those. We defined them. And so that was the starting point. That was kind of the nucleus. And then we started to branch outwards. So now we brought the team in, and we started to talk with some of those high leaders on the team. And we sort of talked about team standards. We kind of explained our values and why we felt those values really shouldn't change. Meaning there should be the values year over year are going to be consistent. Those don't change from year to year. Um, Standards change, but very slowly change, and I'll explain that a little bit. So the standards should be achievable by everyone. This, and then, Mike Tomlin says it for the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, that the standard is the standard, and it's kind of a redundant saying. And if you don't really think about it, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but meaning that everyone has to reach the standard, no exceptions, no question. Everyone has to reach the standard, because if the standard is changed, that becomes the new standard. If you say we're always going to be, or we're never going to swear in our playing area, on our playing surface, and then someone gets hurt and swears, you might understand that. It might be completely understandable, but that's the new standard. That the new standard is we're not going to swear unless we're hurt. Okay. So what if we're angry? Well, it's okay to swear then too. Now we're not going to swear unless we're hurt. So you see what I mean? It kind of degrades into whatever it might be. So the standard has to be consistent and that everyone can do it. It can't be something that only a certain group can do. Now your standards should relate to your values. So here's the example I have on the bottom right. The value was respect. And as an example, one of the things that we respect is a person's time. So the standard might be we will begin practice every day, on time every day. So in swimming, you have these large clocks all around the pool, and they're all synchronized together. So we might say we're going to start practice at 3 o'clock. Well, the clocks, turn 58, 59, double zeros. So everyone knows when it's 3 o'clock. And so the standard might be we will begin practice on time every day. What that looks like in real life, the measurable way to look at it is when those clocks hit double zero, everyone is in the water. Every single person's in the water. So, and a lot of you might say, well, that's easy. That's not a piece of cake. That's fine. But we also have athletic trainers on deck. We have people that are getting equipment. We have people that are doing academic type things, all before practice and after practice. So the athletes have to make the decision if they need to get treatment from the athletic trainer prior to practice. They have to come earlier and account for that so that they can get there on time and get in the water on time. So again, the standard is achievable by everyone. There's no talent required to jump in the pool at 3 o'clock. However, there is some personal responsibility that's required. There's some personal decisions that have to be made in order to reach that standard. So that's something that has to happen in order to make the standard demonstrate the value. So now the standards, again, those should stay pretty consistent. Now, after you elevate your standard for a while, you might raise it up, and that might take a few years to do that. And that kind of comes over time in discussions with your team, but that's kind of the moving as you move your team forward. But again, we're kind of on the building the culture first. The next thing are goals. Now, goals will change, and those might change from season to season. They might change within the season. And I'm sure all of you have at least heard a version of or have been introduced to SMART goals, but I'll go ahead and kind of go over them really quickly as well. But SMART goals are specific, meaning it's not we're going to win, we're going to do well. It's something specific. We are going to make it to the playoffs. We're going to have someone qualify for nationals, whatever that might be. It's measurable. If we're trying to go 7-3 for our record for football, that's a defined number. We're going to have 7 wins and 3 losses. There's a measurable component to that. The next part, and this is where SMART goals get a little different from organization to organization. We like to go with something that's action oriented, meaning how are we going to reach that specific measurable goal? What are we going to do that someone else can see or that we can see that's action oriented. So, for example, going 7-3, we are going to make sure that, and football coaches, I apologize if I'm saying the wrong distances, but we're going to run the ball 150 yards every game. I'm just making up one. And so we believe that if we run the ball for 150 yards every game, then we should be at least 7-3. Maybe the standard that answers to it is that we are always going to hit the right hole in the blocking formation, whatever it might be. So there can be a goal that's also tied to a standard. So the more closely related you can have your goal, standards, and values, the more impactful it'll be for your team, because you can go back and show them, well, we did this in practice and we held up the standard. We did this in the game, and the result was we reached our goal. And you can kind of show the progression from the kind of esoteric idea to the practical result that happens on the field. Your goals have to be realistic. So I'm not sure if 150 yards a game is realistic or not, but your goals have to be realistic. You can't go into the situation and say, last year we had 2 people on our team. This year we're going to win the national championship. You sort of have to make sure that there's a progression and steps, and that's okay because goals can change. And then time related. That's for coaches, that's not usually too difficult. Only because our season is timed, our weeks are timed, our cycles are timed. So we kind of know where we have to be and at a certain place at a certain time. So what's this look like for you as a coach, and how do you set that? So individual daily goals are important, making sure that the athletes know what they're trying to get accomplished that day. And this is probably where it's the foundation of the pyramid, but it's also one of the places that we fall short as coaches most often. We don't reinforce that daily goal. What are we trying to do each day to become better? And then how does that goal relate to our standards and our values? Those individual daily goals should lead up to a competition goal. So I'll use swimming for an example. Maybe we're improving our turns in practice daily. When I go through a competition, I should be able to execute the turn at a high level. And then the season goal. Those turns will help knock off 2/10 of my time, so at the end of the season, I have my season goal. If my time is 2/10 faster, that goes into the team season goal. We moved up 2 spots at the conference rankings, or 1 spot at the conference rankings, because we all knocked off 2/10 of our goal. And overall, that leads to a program goal. And that's kind of that 5-year plan, if you will, of, we weren't ranked. Now we're going to be doing well in the conference, and then doing well nationally, and so on and so forth. So as these goals are reached, what you'll probably find is that might increase your standard. And potentially over time, it may change your value. It may actually not increase, but it may slightly change your value a little bit. But, successfully achieving your goal, that could have an effect, a positive effect, on increasing your standard as well. Now we have to evaluate. So we've got these goals. Are the standards and goals being upheld? And we check for agreement and buy-in. And we do this daily. And after we do it daily, we look at our cycles. Every sport has a different cycle, whether it's week by week, or whether it's kind of the preseason, the conference season, the non-conference season, and so on. We look at competitions. We look at the overall season. So as coaches, we're usually pretty good at that, because we know that everything kind of builds into one another, and we're good at breaking down parts into wholes and things like that. But we have to constantly evaluate and assess and look back and say, what's this look like? So on deck, or in the playing surface, can your teammates, can your athletes verbalize the values? Can they walk up to me on deck and say, hey, what's the 3 core values? Passion, integrity, and commitment. Awesome. Give me a standard for passion. Then they tell me what the standard for passion is. Give me the standard for integrity. Tell me what the standard for integrity is, and so on and so forth. And then we can look at, were our goals achieved? And if they were not, why? Did we fall short of reaching our standard? Did we fall short of our values? What was that? Um, and then we need to revisit at the end of the season. Do we need to revisit our goals or our standards? Are they too high? Are they too lofty? Remember, this is kind of building the foundation. So you could overshoot. It's possible that you may have overshot a little bit in terms of the expectation. It wasn't as realistic as you thought. You may have to reevaluate to kind of go for it. Remember, when you're setting expectations, something that's too high of a goal becomes um, disheartening. Something that's just a little bit more or moderately more challenging to the athlete, that becomes motivating. So you have to have that fine line between um, disheartening and motivating is where you kind of that sweet spot of where you want to be. Accountability. This is probably the most challenging part. And the accountability areas are personal accountability, looking at yourself, between teammates, and then the coach to athletes. Well, the coach to athletes part, we're usually more comfortable with, or we probably wouldn't have gotten to this area of this profession unless this is a brand new area to you. But we're usually okay with saying to our athletes, hey, we need to improve here. What we have to work on sometimes is making sure we celebrate and acknowledge whenever someone does something well. Hey, you held that standard really high today. I appreciate that you get in the water on time. Not just that um, that's what's expected of you as an athlete. I appreciate that you actually fulfill that standard of respect, or however you want to verbalize that to your team. Personal accountability, I think, is probably the next one that might be the next easiest for athletes today, meaning they'll look within themselves and they will know or at least acknowledge that they did or did not do something. The third one is the toughest, which is between the teammates. Verbally saying something to someone on their team and saying, you're not upholding that standard, you're not demonstrating that core value. That's very challenging for individuals. And you have to create an environment and a culture that allows them to do that freely and without attacking one another. Um, so again, these are on the top right here, the hard conversations. Teammates, sometimes they feel like they're calling out each other. And that's that term calling out is sort of a negative connotation. They don't like the feeling that they are kind of putting someone else down, or maybe they don't feel that they are doing well enough that they're in a position to put someone else in their place. So that's a very delicate line that you have to walk so that the individual feels comfortable because they're trying to help them. They're trying to support them, not put them down. Holding one another accountable in public is another thing that we have a lot of conversations about. It's not always what you say, but it's the way that you say it. And then understanding that if someone is giving you a criticism, that it's coming from a place of love and respect, not from a place of anger and kind of being demeaning. And then on the field versus off the field, sometimes we get really great results on the field, meaning in the pool, someone can say, hey, John Doe, kick off the wall a little bit better. Let's try to hit that mark. That's what the expectation was. Let's do that. However, if we're up late playing video games on a Friday night, or if it's time to go out to a party or something like that, it might be a little bit harder for someone to say, hey, we have practice tomorrow morning. We probably shouldn't be out this late. And we as coaches don't even get to see that in the environment. So that's very difficult. But that's something you're aspiring to build to. If the culture can grow to that point, you know that you're doing a great job as a coach, and that you're really building the individuals up that they can take care of themselves, not just on the playing surface, but outside the playing surface as well. So what happened after we did all this? So we created this culture. We got input from the athletes. We did all these different things. So we came up with captains, and we essentially have three captains. We have a men's captain, a women's captain, and a diving captain. Diving has a non-gender specific captain, mainly due to the fact that there are fewer divers. I think the total amount of divers is like 10 versus the 50 swimmers or 55 swimmers. So we had the three captains. And then we have class representatives, and diving should be in here as well. But it's a freshman, male and female, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then male and female diving representatives as well. that they aren't the liaisons per se, but they are the individuals that we try to have them there, that if the athlete is uncomfortable talking to us as an adult, or they're intimidated by us as an adult, they can talk to this representative that's there for them. And then we have committees, and then the committees fulfill different roles all the way across. So there's a pride committee, an academic committee, a social committee. For example, the pride committee, they're responsible for things like the team gear, what we're wearing to meet, being in the locker room, being clean. What are the goals being reached? The academic committee looks at grades and there are people attending classes. The social committee is looking at social media, events, and recruiting. And we're giving them responsibilities. These are different people, by the way. So the captain cannot also be a class representative. The class representative cannot be a committee head. So everyone starts taking on a little bit more responsibility to do that. So how do we get these people? So we invite them first. That's the first step. So we invited the class reps first. So it's kind of a little bit of a backwards process. We invited the class reps first as a coaching staff, the very first group of class reps, to be part of the process. And then we let them know that this is kind of the job description. This is what you're going to be doing. And they discussed it, and they had questions, and they either accepted it or did not accept it. Now that we're a couple years into it, what happens now is the reps come to us, because we have people that graduate, of course, and maybe people who don't want to do it because they have a heavy workload for school, whatever it might be, and they end up not doing it. And then there's new freshmen coming on. So they determine if they're going to do the role or not. And then they invite new reps. So they look for those, who represents the core values the best, who is going to be a leader on the team. And then they invite them, they discuss what the role is specifically, and then they talk to the reps, and the reps either accept or not accept. And that might pull someone from a committee head. So that committee head now is vacant, and now gives another person an opportunity to fulfill that role. So what we try to stay away from is one person doing everything. All of you are part of committees at work and school, I'm sure, and you know that oftentimes if you're on a committee, 10% of the people do 90% of the work. We try to get away from that by saying you can't do more than one role. Now, if you're a rep, you can be on a committee, but you can't be the committee head. It needs to be somebody else. So that's sort of the process that we use to get the reps and the committee heads. The reps then vote on who will be the captains, of the team, and that's they come to us for advice, but we don't vote on that. We have final approval, of course, but we try to guide them more so than saying. That's had an interesting effect. They had 2 people this year that they wanted to make a rep, and so we said basically your options are to have no rep, 2 reps, or pick one. Well, they had trouble picking one because that was 2 people that they both liked a lot. We said kind of break it down. Who's the better leader? Who's the better? Who has the values the most? What are the things that you like? So that's sort of how they went through that process and how they got to the next point. So to facilitate this, we went through a lot of team building exercises. Now, you saw some of the pictures earlier of the team. We went on team hikes. We had a book club, and we used the book, the program, which I want to show you next. And we went through chapter by chapter of the book to kind of use it as a guide point. And we'd have these small group discussion breakouts, and we would talk about, okay, did the rep do this for you? Is this a situation? What about this situation? And the situations were very different from swimming. The individuals who wrote the program were all former special operations military. So the situations were very different than we would experience. So it was very easy for the athletes to kind of jump into the role of something else because it wasn't them. It wasn't their specific situation. So I would recommend that if you can have an outside organization or even an outside example that you can bring in so that the team isn't using their specific teammates, their specific examples right away, that will allow them to speak freely, and then you can start bringing in their specific examples and their specific things. That makes it a little bit more of an easier transition into that talk. And special thanks to the program again. They were the individuals who kind of facilitated this for us. Um, the work was on our own. The head coach would meet with the program maybe once every couple of weeks. Some of the reps would meet with the program once a month, and then we used this book, which is great, and it has a lot of wonderful examples in it to go through. I don't work for the program. I'm just letting you know what we used. I think that a lot of different books and a lot of different frameworks would work. I just want to let you know that we did use something additional. They didn't really guide us in terms, especially during COVID. They weren't on site. They didn't necessarily guide us or facilitate little breakout sessions or anything like that. But it did give us a frame. It gave us a skeleton. We knew that we had to get to this next point as the staff, and so we could help kind of usher the students along. All of you have some experience in education, some experience in coaching and motivating individuals. So use your experiences as well, because at the end of the day, you're going to walk away and you're going to be the person that has to live in this environment, in this culture that you're creating. But sometimes having a framework like a book or a program or something like that kind of lets you step back a little bit and you kind of show your team, hey, this is where we're trying to get to, and this is how we're trying to get there. But at the end, you'll have some type of structure and value system that everyone agrees with and understands and can articulate and put back for your team. And then hopefully at the end, all of you will climb to the top of the mountain together and go from there. So I hope that you are able to put some of this information into practice, and that you're able to have a great season for whatever sport that you might be working with. I will do a quick chat here, and I will put in the chat my information, and so that you have this. And if you would like the slideshow, I'm happy to send it to you. So I am at richard.west@fairmontstate.edu. I'll also give you my cell phone, and that's 304-692-9145. Please feel free to ask questions. Let me know if this was helpful to you, if it wasn't helpful to you, if anybody even watched it. The way that these things are, these virtual conferences, it'll be hard to see if that's the case or not. So I hope that you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing all of you in person again at some point. Thanks very much. Have a good day.